following is a local resident producers program. The program content is the sole responsibility of the producer and does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of CATV2, Oshkosh Community Media Services, the City of Oshkosh, or Time Warner Cable.
Hi everybody, welcome to Oshkosh. I'm Cheryl Hentz, as I'm sure most of you know after this number of years. Anyway, we are entering now, I believe, our 8th year, I think so, and you've been on a number of times.
I have.
We're very pleased to have EJ Jelinski joining us this evening. EJ first came on our scene here at Oshkosh back when you were running for district attorney, what seems like a very long time ago as well. And for some people, maybe for yourself, it probably was. But now you're here tonight to talk about another race that you're entering. So, welcome.
Well, thank you for having me.
We appreciate your being here. That race, of course, is Judge Carver is going to be stepping down from the bench next year. And you have announced your candidacy for Branch 5 in the Winnebago County court system. So we're pleased to have you in the race, and you're going to tell us all about your campaign tonight. So at least what you want us and your opponents to know.
I'm happy to share. I'm happy to share.
So, well, let's start, EJ. I mean, what have you been doing since you ran for DA those number of years ago?
Since then, I've been in private practice. As you know, Cheryl, my friend Tom Chelkoff, who I went to law school with and worked with me in the district attorney's office, he and I started private practice. We've been in it for about 8 years now, and we formed a law firm called Jelinski and Chelkoff and Jelinski.
Get the name right.
He likes to be first, Chelkoff and Jelinski, and we practice out of Menasha and Waupaca. And he is the senior partner, and I am the managing partner because he's older. So,
and he's also bigger.
That's true.
He's a lot taller.
He's very tall. He's very tall. But private practice has been a nice experience. It's been nice working for ourselves and making a living based on our own individual skills. And the general practice is going well. And I think we've been fairly successful at it. We're very comfortable.
Okay. And so now you're entering the political arena again. What makes you want to do this?
Well, as you know, Judge Carver's been on the bench for 36 years, and he leaves a pretty big hole when he leaves next July or August and is done with Branch 5. And, you know, nobody wants to be in court. Nobody wants to end up in a lawsuit or in a criminal case. But I think that when you have to be there, and it's your marriage on the line, or it's your house on the line, or you have been the victim of a crime, or your family has been hurt and damaged by crime, you want to be in front of someone who gives a darn. You want to be in front of someone who's going to treat you with respect and who is going to understand the system and understand why you're there and do right by you. Mm-hmm. Make a reasoned decision, make a deliberative decision, and somebody who cares about the community. Somebody who'll do the right thing, even if doing the right thing means it's not the most popular thing. And so that's why I'm running. I think there should be a judge. There should be a judge on the bench like that, and I think I could be that judge.
Okay. And you know, as I mentioned to you when we first set this interview up, you know, I realize it's very, very early in this process. I mean, it's a spring election, but you would not take office until sometime in the summer, or when would you actually take office?
That's correct. You take over in August. The primary is February 16th, and then the general election would be in April. We just finished up the November round of elections. I think most of that was focused on the 23rd District of New York and Virginia. There wasn't much in Wisconsin for the elections. I believe nomination papers are due in by January 2nd of 2010. So I would expect January and February to be the bulk of the campaigning. But I think as of this week, everyone that I'm aware of who's going to attempt to seek judge's seat have entered the race and are now officially announced. So I think there's 4 of us.
Well, I wanted to have you on because I have, of course, gotten some fundraising information in the mail from you, and so I knew you had really started gearing up for this. So I thought, you know, have you on, talk about what your fundraising things are that you've got planned so far, and talk about what some of your positions on the issues are and so forth, and then, you know, when it gets closer to the campaign season, have you back. And of course, you know, the other candidates are certainly going to be invited as well, or they can contact me and we'll get them on. But the candidates who are going to be running against you are John Jorgensen, who you used to work with in the DA's office. He's still there. Now, he's no longer deputy DA, correct?
No, he's not the deputy. When I worked there, he was the deputy DA, and I believe he's an assistant district attorney now. I think he's been there for, well, he's been there for quite some time.
Yeah, it's been a while. And then David Keck, who is currently a court commissioner here in Winnebago County, and Mark Fremgen, who's also a defense attorney. Those, have I missed somebody else, or are you guys the 4?
No, those are the 4 that I'm aware of. And Mark Fremgen, to his credit, is a family court commissioner and was in private practice and was with the public defender's office. He's been a court commissioner as well for some time.
Oh, he is currently. Okay.
Yeah, I believe February of 2009 he was hired as the family court commissioner in Winnebago County.
I
So
was not aware
he
of
and
that.
Dave Keck are sharing commissioner responsibilities
I see.
within the county. There are 3 court commissioners for Winnebago County: Dan Bissett, Mark Fremgen, and Dave Keck.
And they share the position, then? Is that what
Well, they share the duties. There are 3 official commissioners, and they share the duties
right.
that have to be split up.
Okay. So what sets E.J. Jelinski apart from your opponents?
Well, I think it says a lot that private practice has allowed me to practice law in all of the different facets and areas. So I think that my experience that I would bring to the bench is pretty broad. Civil litigation, family law, criminal law, wills, real estate, small business representation. Our firm has handled all of that from the beginning, and so I think that broad range of experience is helpful. I think as well, having been a prosecutor and currently a municipal prosecutor for the city of Menasha, I think also brings a certain depth to the bench, because I've had the ability to both be on the defense side and be on the prosecution side, as well as doing civil litigation. So I think I have broad experience, and I think that'll be helpful.
So I suppose it would be fair then to say that realm of experience, that depth of experience, is something that your opponents don't have. I mean, they have done some of these things, but are you saying that you're the only one who has done all of these things?
Well, I'm describing what the skill sets that I think that I can bring to the bench. I'll let them speak as to their experience or whether they have it or not.
No, but what I'm saying is, you know, you have been a prosecutor. Well, John Jorgensen's a prosecutor.
Correct.
He worked in private practice, not to the best of my knowledge.
No, he has not.
Then you've got 2 others who are sharing court commissioner responsibilities. They've also been defense attorneys. Have they worked in the DA's office?
No, they have not.
So I guess that's what I'm saying, is that you seem to be the only one that has that total range, as opposed to the others who have, you know, some here and some there. Not saying that they're better candidates than you, I'm just talking about experience.
No, and I understand that, and that's true. I mean, in terms of the broad impact of experience, I think that I think that I'm as well-rounded as one could get in terms of an attorney. Experience-wise, and you know, they may bring other skill sets to the bench, but I think that I would do. I think I would have a broader perspective.
Okay, so those are the things that you feel qualify you for a judgeship.
Yes.
Okay, we have a wide range of, I guess, types of judges in this county.
We do,
as probably most counties do. You know, we have some who I think are tougher on crime, if you will. I hate to use that that expression, but I mean that is the truth. I think that Judge Gritton and Judge Hart Key, and you know, they've been around for a while, and they are, I think, tougher on certain criminals than others. Judge Carver, who you would be replacing when he vacates the seat, I think has a reputation for being a little bit less strict, less tough on crime. And you know, where would E.J. Jelinski put himself on that spectrum?
Well, I think it's difficult. I think it's a difficult question to answer, and I know it's a question that comes to people's mind a lot. But I feel that running a campaign based on, well, I'm going to be tough on crime, I think is somewhat disingenuous for people to say. If somebody commits a crime, if they have been proven to have committed that crime either by a jury or through a plea of guilty or no contest, and it is my job to sentence that person, to punish that person, certainly the punishment will fit the crime. But each individual case that comes before me is going to have a different set of facts, a different application of law, probably a different statute applied to it or a different charge. And so it's going to be, I think, a huge responsibility to apply the law that's brought before me to the facts that are brought before me. Mm-hmm. I think judges have a very serious obligation to do that, to be deliberative, to look at the facts that are brought before them, to apply the law to those facts each and every time, and to make sweeping statements about, in the case of a drunk driver, I will always do this. In the case of a drug dealer, I will always do this. In the case of a divorce where people have a marital estate of over $1 million, I will always do this, I think is somewhat disingenuous. Mm-hmm. I can tell you that from a philosophical perspective, I think that the punishment should always fit the crime, and I think that if you have hurt others in the community, if you violated the law, you should be punished for doing that. If it's been proven that you did that, you should be punished for it. To say what that punishment would be, I can't do that without having a specific set of facts. And I know that certain judges have certain reputations based on the sentences that they've handed out, but having been in front of Judge Key and Judge Gritton and Judge Carver and the rest of them on many, many, many occasions, I find that their sentences aren't as predictable as one would think. Mm-hmm. And in the high-profile cases that each of those judges might get, their sentences might be remembered, and so you might think of Judge Key as a tougher judge or Judge Carver as a more lenient judge. But I find it to be somewhat grayer than that. And I'm actually happy about that, because I've seen Judge Carver hand out what somebody would consider a lenient sentence. I've also seen him hand out what somebody would consider a draconian sentence. Mm-hmm. But it was very dependent on the facts of the case, and it's the same with Judge Key and Judge Gritton. And to not know what I'm going to do until the facts are in front of me, and for the attorneys to know that it will be based on the facts, I think is the highest compliment a judge can receive.
Sure. Well, I agree. And, you know, people are always second-guessing judges. You know, we second-guess attorneys. We second-guess a lot of people. And you are right in that we have to look at all the facts. And you may know more of the facts surrounding this particular case I'm going to ask you about than some. You certainly probably don't know as many as Judge Carver does, since he was the presiding judge. But do you feel that 5 years fit the crime of killing a teenage girl and seriously injuring her mother in a drunk driving case? And that's the most recent one that has gotten a lot of publicity that Judge Carver presided over.
Well, and again, I'll be somewhat philosophical, and I know, Cheryl, that you are an aggressive person and an aggressive reporter, and I know you're not going to like this answer, but I think it's the honest answer. Mm-hmm. And that is that, number one, I have never felt as an attorney, nor would I feel as a judge, that it's appropriate to Monday morning quarterback the person who was in the courtroom, who knew all of the facts, who heard all of the evidence, and I was not there. So, you know, I know what's been reported publicly in the press, but I wasn't there. I was neither prosecuting nor defending that case, and I certainly wasn't the judge in that case. And so I think it's professionally inappropriate to Monday morning quarterback a decision that the person who was appraised of all of the facts made. I also consider Judge Carver to be a personal friend, and so I also don't think that it would be appropriate for me to Monday morning quarterback him as a friend either. I think I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. You know, would I have done something different appraised of all the facts? Maybe. But again, I don't know what those facts were, and so I can't make that decision. I know that people were upset with that decision, but again, without knowing all of the information, I can't tell you what I would have done, and I don't know why Judge Carver did what he did. And I can understand that the community, reading some of the facts, might be upset with the sentence. And being appraised of all of the facts, I might be upset with the sentence.
Yeah.
But I don't know what they are, and so I can't speculate on it.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this then. We'll go about this a slightly different way. Because I agree, I understand what you're saying, and that's why I premised the question with what I did, is that it's easy to sit back and second guess, and we don't have all the facts. You said that Judge Carver is a personal friend of yours. Do you feel, because of the public outrage over this sentence, do you feel that your friendship with him may play an impact of some kind or to some degree in your campaign?
You know, I think that Judge Carver, having been on the bench for 36 years, leaves some pretty big shoes to fill.
Yeah.
He is, I think, the longest serving, if not in the top 5 longest serving judges in Wisconsin currently. I would hope that the public is aware of who I am and would judge me or decide whether or not they're going to vote for me for that position based on my history and based on my my abilities and how I campaign, and not based on whether or not I know Judge Carver. There are many attorneys, you know, who know Judge Carver, and the other people running in this race have known him for many, many, many years, and you know, I consider him to be a personal friend. But I would hope that my personal friendship with him does not influence people positively or negatively towards voting for me. And I would hope that I would be judged on my own merits. I think that would be appropriate.
Okay. Well, let's talk about your history. As I mentioned at the outset, we first got to know you when you ran for DA. And you got a lot of backlash for, I mean, I think probably most viewers are well aware of the situation with you, your current law firm partner, Tom Chalkoff, and kind of going after then DA Joe Paulus. You got a lot of flack for secretly recording conversations between the two of you and Mr. Paulus, and not just recording those conversations without his knowledge, but releasing them. And, you know, I was all for your releasing those tapes. As you well know, I worked on your campaign, and I was probably one of the few who said, and you disagreed with me, you didn't want to release them.
No.
But a lot of us, you know, said you need to do this in order to kind of prove what you were saying. Do you think that having done that will hurt you? Because then you got a lot of flack about it. Now, of course, it came to fruition, as I think everybody knows, that Joe Paulus was doing a lot of things that he shouldn't have been doing, and he's still in prison, I think,
Yes.
to this day.
Yes.
And so everything that you were saying came around full circle and was proven to be correct. So do you think that that tape recording incident will hurt, help, or not play a factor at all here?
You know, I can't speculate on whether or not that incident would help or hurt this campaign. I can say with certainty that the other 3 people who are running in this campaign are decent people. They are accomplished lawyers, and you know, I don't have. The nice thing about this campaign is there are a number of candidates to choose from who are qualified candidates, and so I think that that's a plus in this race. I hope that the community has kind of gotten past the pain and embarrassment that the Paulus saga caused to this community. And as you well know, Cheryl, at that time, we had to make some very, very painful decisions from the very beginning. Tom and I knew that we were going to be fired. We knew that our careers as prosecutors were going to be over. And then when it became a 3-way race in the primary, it was very likely, given Mr. Paulus's 17-year tenure and his popularity in the county, that he could win the primary with 34% of the vote. And if he had won the primary, because there was an ongoing FBI investigation, he would be in a primary position to obstruct the investigation. And we knew at the time that he was already engaging in some of that activity, and the potential for him to be the district attorney for 2 additional years was there. And we were in a position to, unfortunately, I think as some people have suggested, commit the political equivalent to murder-suicide and further damage our reputations by releasing the tapes. But we were trying to assure ourselves that he wasn't going to be the district attorney. We were in a position to be able to stop him from being the district attorney any further. And so we made that calculated decision, knowing that there was no way that I was going to be able to prevail in that race after that, and that our reputations would be damaged by that. Now, in the end, it has worked out that, you know, he was in fact convicted of committing the crimes that we accused him of, and he was not in a position to obstruct the investigation because he lost that election. It was a very, very difficult decision to do. There were some massive consequences for it, and I'm not proud of that, but I am comfortable with it, and I hope people understand why I did it, and I hope that they've forgiven me for doing that, and they understand why it is that I felt that I had to do that. Sure. I don't think it's a reflection on how I practice professionally, and I don't think it's a reflection on this campaign. It was a unique situation and a very difficult decision for us to make, and it was a hard thing to do, but it was the right thing to do, I think. And
it
so
was a means to an end.
I'll stand by it. And if people are still upset about that, that's my burden. I have to live with that, and I will.
Okay.
But I'm hoping that we have moved past that, and that,
sure,
you know, he's gone now, and let's move on.
All right. Moving on, how do you feel about some of the more creative types of sentencing that we're seeing with respect to, you know, drug dealers and, in some cases, drunk drivers, things like that?
I think that the justice system is searching for some way to influence people who might not be. They're committing crimes, but they're committing crimes not because necessarily they're criminal in nature, but because they have an addiction, because they have substance abuse problems, because they have historical family problems. And how do we intervene at some point in their lives to try to correct this problem? Because we've found over time that statistically it's far, far cheaper to intervene early and try to get these people on the right path, rather than continually seeing them come through the system, locking them up, have it happen again, locking them up, and have it happen again. We try to do that through probation and parole a lot in many, many criminal cases. The problem with probation and parole is it suffers from the same problem that the district attorneys and the judicial system is that overworked and under-budgeted. And so they have a tremendous number of cases and not enough people to handle them, and therefore not enough time to spend on each person. And so some of these creative sentences that have been handed down, and the STOP program for second and third offense drunk drivers in Winnebago County as a pilot program, the drug court, which it wasn't a pilot program in Winnebago County, but very close, and Judge Wolt and Judge Key have been instrumental in that. I think that those have the potential to bear fruit, and I'm a supporter of them and hope that they work. We'll have to see long term if they have a statistical reduction in the number of drunk driving offenses or the number of drug offenses that are committed in the community. Right now we're trying to see whether or not those can be additional alternatives to probation and parole. I hope that they work, I sincerely do, because it's much, much cheaper to grab somebody and say, you need to fix this part of your life, and we're here to help you do that. And at the same time, you're in a position to carry a very big stick, because now you've been convicted of a crime, or you're about to be convicted of a crime. And so if you don't comply, and if you don't try to go through this program, you know exactly what's going to happen to you, and that's a very big motivational factor. So, I hope that they're successful. Time will tell.
Okay. What, just real quickly, are some of the other platforms that you're running on right now? And I say quickly because we're running out of time, but we can expound on those a little bit more the next time we have you back. But
sure.
What are you running on as some issues?
I think, first of all, it's important to have. I think it's important to have a judge who is going to be deliberative. And I think that's one of the reasons that I would make a good fit for this particular position. You need to be able to calm down, take a look at what's going on. There are always issues in the press about particular cases, and not just criminal cases, but criminal cases seem to get the brunt of press coverage because a lot of them are, for lack of a better word, showy or flashy. You know, the major crimes that happen in this county get a tremendous amount of coverage, and not always accurate coverage. And the other area that I can think of off the top of my head is divorces. Family law is very, very emotional. The sides are very hardened against each other oftentimes. And the disputes that arise in family law cases are very difficult to deal with. And nobody's going to be happy with the decision that the judge makes.
Especially where there's kids involved.
Especially where there's kids involved. And it shocks me the number of divorces where perfectly reasonable people who have decided to end their marriage end up using the children as pawns against each other. And my parents divorced when I was in second grade, and thankfully never did that. And have actually remained good friends to this day.
To this day, yes.
But the number of children who suffer under that, and otherwise good people who just lose perspective. And to be able to bring that perspective into the courtroom and say, listen, folks, you can't be doing this. You have to treat your children with respect. You have to have some perspective on what's going on. To be able to take the criminal cases where the defense attorney, because of the press, is at Mach 10, and the prosecutor is at Mach 10 as well, and to be able to say, we need to apply the law to the facts. We need to be deliberative about this case. We need to do the right thing. We need to do it correctly, we need to do it carefully, and we need to think about it. And I think this is not a criticism of the sitting judges in Winnebago County, because I think Winnebago County does a very good job of this. But you tend to have judges who are so overloaded with their cases that they run through them very quickly. There's not a lot of deliberation. There's not a lot of preparation. And wrong decisions get made. And if you make the wrong decision as a judge, the consequences can be enormous. For many people that are coming before you, this is the only time they're going to be in court. And what's at stake for them, what's on the line for them, could be their career, could be their marriage, could be their freedom. And so you need to take each and every one of those very seriously.
Okay.
And I want to do that, and I think that I can.
Okay. You've got a couple of fundraisers coming up. Can you just real quickly tell people what they are? Sure.
December 7th in Neenah at Canova's, we're having a fundraiser, and we're also having one at Beckett's and Oshkosh on December 8th.
So December 7th in Menasha, or in Neenah, and
December 8th in Oshkosh.
At
Yep,
Beckett's.
and they're more meet the candidates than fundraisers, but feel free, anybody can come, the public is welcome. I'd love to meet everybody.
Okay.
And they're from 5 to 7.
Okay, 5 to 7, very good. Well, thanks, EJ, for being here. We didn't get to all my questions, but we'll have another chance.
I appreciate it, no problem.
All right, we're going to take a very short break. When we come back, Representative Gordon Hintz will be here. We'll be talking about some changes in state driving automotive insurance laws. So we'll be right back.
Dear Mom and Dad, well, I finally have some time off, so I'm writing to tell you that I'm doing well. We have good days and bad days over here. We try to remember the good ones and get through the bad ones. Mostly we have each other, and that's what keeps us going. And Mom, since you asked, if anyone wants to help, just tell them to contact the USO. You can't believe how much they do for us. With love, your son, Michael.
Every year, the U.S. Department of the Treasury receives about 1.4 million reports of problems with paper checks. Checks can be lost, stolen, or delayed. If you still receive Social Security payments by paper check, Treasury wants you to know about a safer, more convenient way to get your money. The Direct Express Prepaid Debit MasterCard. The Direct Express card is new and is available to anyone receiving Social Security benefits, even if you don't have a bank account. Your monthly benefits will be automatically placed onto your card account each month on the day your money is due. While other debit cards cost money, it is possible to use the Direct Express card for free to make purchases, pay bills, and get cash at thousands of locations nationwide. There are no sign-up or monthly account fees. No more waiting for the mail or worrying about lost or stolen checks. Call 1-877-212-9991 or visit www.usdirectexpress.com.
We were in an emergency situation. We don't have extra. We have a little bit of water and a little bit of food. A meeting place, no.
No.
I don't think we have a first aid kit.
We have tuna fish, we have
Right.
beans, we have canned tomatoes,
True.
you know.
That's true, but that's really not survival food. Tomato paste.
Yeah, well, yeah, right?
Here we go. And welcome back to the second half of Eye on Oshkosh. Gordon Hintz is here. He is the representative in the State Assembly from the 54th Assembly District. You've been on a number of times, and we're always happy to have you back. I asked you to come back tonight, Gordon. If we have time, we'll get into a few other things that are going on, but I asked you here primarily because there's been a lot of talk in just the last couple of weeks in particular about the change in automobile insurance requirements in the state of Wisconsin, and basically the minimum requirements of what you have to carry in certain coverages has been bumped up, and that is going to affect people's rates. And just a kind of a viewer note here, the Wisconsin Insurance Alliance will be coming on in a couple of weeks, and they'll present their position, because their position on this is very different from your position and the lawmaker's position. So, I mean, there's, you know, each side is
There
blaming
usually
the other.
is.
So, yeah. So anyway, I guess, you know, I just kind of threw it out there in a nutshell what it is, but explain for us, if you can, what the changes really are and how they came about.
Sure. Well, for years we're one of two states that currently doesn't require mandatory auto insurance. And you know, I think everybody knows someone, and I know I've been contacted several times after an accident where someone is hit by someone with no auto insurance, and it's incredibly frustrating. And people have said, well, you know, why can't we get mandatory auto insurance like they have in other states? And every year I think there's been a bill introduced that's been, you know, difficult to get through. The insurance industry will say, well, people will just get insurance for the minimum, and or drop it after a certain amount of time, or, you know, they won't get it at all. And we have pretty high auto insurance coverage in Wisconsin, but the first thing is starting June 1st of next year, you'll be required under law to have auto insurance. So that was one of the things that was addressed in this year's budget. And there's a $500 fine if you don't have, so there's some teeth in there as well. And what happens each time we have people that are uninsured is the cost shifts to people, just like it does with health insurance, to people that do have auto insurance, and you know, rates have to go up to do that. So this is one of the things that we wanted to you know, get through in the insurance industry. That's coming in next week. Spent $1 million this year fighting against these type of reforms. The second thing we wanted to do is, if we're going to require auto insurance, we want it to actually mean something. It's no good if you require auto insurance and it has, you know, you have a $5 plan. It's not going to cover too many things. We hadn't adjusted our minimums in 27 years. So, you know, medical care costs that were $25,000 in 1982, you know, would be $105,000 today. So we wanted to make sure that, you know, we had coverage that if you're going to have insurance, that it's actually insurance. So we upped the minimum liability coverage to $50,000 for an injury to one person, $100,000 if there's an injury to multiple people, and $15,000 for property coverage. We also increased the coverage for uninsured motorists, meaning if you are hit by an uninsured motorist, the kind of coverage that you have available. One of the things that has happened in this debate is most of us that carry insurance, anywhere from 85 to 90%, our minimums are already above that, meaning we're already carrying the new limits of coverage. You know, it's really that, you know, 10 to 15% of people that have minimum insurance plans that below that might see some increases due to this. You know, and before I was in the legislature in the mid-90s, there were some changes made that sort of reversed some of the consumer protections that we're enacting now with these coverage limits. that we're now changing back. In the 90s, the insurance lobby was very effective at getting rid of some of these coverage requirements, selling everybody on the fact that it would keep insurance premiums down.
Yeah.
You can ask the insurance industry next week what happened there, because I don't think in any time after those promises were made we saw insurance premiums go down. The reaction is, people get their insurance bills. Some people have told me that they've stayed pretty flat. I think American Family Insurance said they're going up 1.8%. But there's very little transparency in the why, different things are going up. Between September of 2008 and March of 2009, insurance premiums for auto insurance in Wisconsin went up 21%. That kind of mirrors the time that the market collapsed, because the insurance industry makes money two ways, off of your premiums and their market investments. And so when the market loses 41%, they're losing a lot as well. And I would suggest that the market probably has more to do with the shift that occurred than any action that we took. But I think the industry has seen it as an opportunity to put the blame game on. And there's a debate to be had, and I understand some of the criticism that it was done in the budget, but we've seen the insurance industry be pretty effective at blocking it in the traditional legislative process, which is one of the reasons that it probably bypassed that, although a lot of these ideas, have been introduced on an annual basis and also really take us back in terms of protections to what we had pre-1995.
Mm-hmm. Well, obviously when you have the bare minimum of coverage and you're now having to get something more, it stands to reason that you're going to be paying more. I mean, you can't get more for less or more for the same amount, not when it comes to insurance anyway. So that stands to reason that, okay, someone could then honestly say, well, it's because of this new legislation that I'm having to pay more. But by the same token, I do hear what you're saying is that insurance companies do have money invested, and it's heavily invested in markets, and they have, like all of us, taken losses in the last year or so. And so, are you saying then that they're trying to recoup some of their losses through perhaps increased rates that otherwise might not have to be as high?
Yes, or
Okay.
I'm saying that there are, again, the headlines of USA Today, again in spring, was that auto insurance was going up 4%, 5%, 9%, in different areas due to market losses. And that was from, the auto insurance industry journals. So that's what they were sort of self-reporting. And again, I reported the 21% increase. If you are someone who had auto coverage that was already at the new minimums that were included in the budget, I highly suggest it's a nice time to shop around. And I know a lot of people are doing that. Get some quotes. I told some people at office hours the other day, someone told me, they got 15% less. It's something that we sort of take as a given. But it is something you should, shop around on. Now, I just changed mine before these recent changes, and then I got nicked a little bit, and have a good relationship with my insurance person, and we're going to probably have a conversation about those things. But I guess, the point of raising the market losses is that there are a lot of factors that go into, insurance premiums. And I mean, how can we say, here's an industry that they still had $1 million to spend lobbying us this year in trying to defeat these measures.
Yeah.
That certainly cost money to auto insurance holders. So I guess there are a lot of other issues that impact cost. And again, I can understand if you had coverage existing that was below the new minimum threshold, but people should also look beyond cost here and look at what they're getting, which is significantly enhanced coverage that not only covers additional uninsured motorist protection, but if there's a personal injury and the coverage didn't cover that, it automatically then healthcare costs get shifted as well. So in states that have had thresholds along the lines of what we're talking about, litigation and healthcare costs have been able to stay down as a result. So there are some corresponding broader savings as well. So
Well, not to mention if you don't have insurance coverage that will suffice to cover whatever injuries you may cause or whatever property damage you may cause, you can be sued for the difference. And if you have to hire an attorney to fight that, or even just for some reason end up losing in court, it's going to cost you substantially more than a little bit more on your insurance bill each month or every 6 months or however you pay your bill. So,
and the auto insurance industry, varies greatly. I really like my guy a lot. He answers my questions. I don't want to paint a dark spot on all of them, but we have to remember it's a for-profit industry. And again, when the market's hot, there's a lot of things they can do. But when they made their promises in the mid-'90s about premiums getting lower, they didn't. When premiums went up 21% over the last year, they said it was market losses, and now with some recent changes, that hurt their ability to cherry pick because, for the most part, they want to, give insurance coverage to people that are at low risk because it's unlikely that they're going to have to pay out. But for people that were uninsured that are purchasing auto insurance, there's also some language that their first-time auto insurance purchasers, they are not allowed to be put into an immediate high-risk pool just because they didn't have insurance previously, another provision that they were probably not happy with.
Okay, all right. Well, and let's not forget the insurance companies still have some of the most beautiful buildings around you ever wanted to see. And that's just a fact. That's not a dig at the insurance industry. That's just a fact. So anyway, the Oshkosh Northwestern did an editorial on this a few weeks back, and they said two things, that this should not have been, well, they said a lot of things, but two things in particular. They said that this should not have been buried in the budget bill, and that was one of the reasons that they were calling for it to be immediately repealed. I think a lot of legislation is put in budget bills. Historically, is it not?
It is, and I know a lot of the changes, for instance, when the QEO was first put into place in the 90s, that was done in the budget. I understand their criticism there, and I understand why people are frustrated sometimes. All of these things do receive a hearing. It's just that it's done through the joint finance process and not in the standing committees that normally move it through. But I also now understand how complicated the legislative process is, having lived through an awfully tough year in an insurance lobby that would have either the opportunity to kill it at the committee level or in one of the houses and not the other, or make some poison pill amendments that, everybody that had to vote for the budget had to accept some things they liked and didn't like. And, sometimes some of the toughest issues to get through, such as mandatory auto insurance, are easier to do just process-wise. But, I understand that criticism.
Well, I too, I hear what you're saying about, things needing to be sometimes in budget bills, and a lot of times they are, as we just talked about. But is there a reason in particular why these things are not standalone type issues? And secondarily, wouldn't that make the whole budget approval process go faster? Because so many times we see the budgets getting bogged down because there's partisanship here on certain issues, not just in particular this one, but a lot of different issues, and that bogs down getting budgets approved. So wouldn't it just make the whole process cleaner and faster to just have these issues voted on separately and just do the budget as a budget?
Yes, the budget should be a fiscal document first and foremost, and while there is a nexus on some of the policy in the budget to cost constraints and other things, I go back to the difference between, how you would like to see things work and then how they actually work. Right now, you've got an incredibly difficult economic challenge, really tough budget situation, and very slim majorities in each house where you're going to need to govern, and you're going to need, to get votes done. But, Schoolhouse Rock tells you how a bill becomes a law, and there's all these different places in the legislative process to, again, the bigger the bill or the more complicated the issue or the more powerful an interest group lobby, such as the insurance lobby has, the easier it is going to be for them to find one place to, delay a bill, to kill a bill, to stop it. So, you know, and that may not be a good enough answer for certain people, but you know, we were fighting a lot about some of the policy items. It would have been easier, I think, to just focus on those things. At the same time, you know, I understand why some of the, you know, again, mandatory auto insurance is something that gets introduced every session and is always very difficult to pass otherwise. So when you put it in something like this, even if you had individuals who opposed the changes, you know, you don't get to pick and choose sometimes when you have to govern. There's always going to be certain things you don't like. You have to decide as an overall budget if it does most of the things you wanted and, you know, grit your teeth on some of the other things.
So even though a lot of these things, Gordon, have dollars and cents attached to them, and from that standpoint it would make sense, I suppose, to have it attached to a budget bill, it's really more of a strategic type move than anything else to help things
Yes, and
pass.
it's probably something I didn't totally understand until I saw how difficult it was to, especially this year, and you know, most every state in the country is dealing with the same thing. The fiscal decisions were hard enough, but again, with very slim majorities in each house, and you know, the pressure from the minority to have the majority deliver just about everybody in there makes it, you know, difficult. And it also, standalone votes are always going to be tougher, but if it's inclusive in a broader package, you know, some of the things we had, we were able to, joint and several liability was something that was in the budget and got taken out because people fought pretty hard to get that taken out as a provision that, you know, deserved its own day and its own hearing.
There's more room for give and take than if it's part of a broader measure, if you will.
Absolutely.
Well, the second part of my original question then was about repeal, and of course the Northwestern did say that it should be repealed. Is there any kind of a movement started for that? And if so,
you know, I know
what do you
Senator
think it
Ellis,
has?
I mean, I think you sort of had a reactive advocacy by the auto insurance industry and people starting to get their bills, and then I think you had a reactive bill to repeal these changes by Senator Ellis, and then a reactive editorial by the Northwestern sort of commenting on it. And I never got asked the question, nor did I think they consider you know, what the benefits of this were. You know, that you were expanding consumer protections considerably, that you were addressing the fact that we're one of 2 states without mandatory auto insurance, and that we haven't increased the minimums in 27 years. I mean, it's either insurance or it's not. I mean, why don't we have $10 insurance if, you know, if it's, I mean, because some of the limits we had simply weren't going to cover it. So, you know, I thought about responding or, you know, trying to get a counterpiece in there. And I've heard from some people after that. But when you talk to them about the benefit that they're getting, how this reestablishes consumer protections that we had before 1995 and some of the other things that go into increasing insurance premiums, I think most people are pretty comfortable with that. And, you know, maybe we'll examine if there's some provisions in there that we do think can be fixed. We'll certainly look at it, but again, I think Senator Ellis was looking more for headlines than he was at anything, you know, substantive.
So there's nothing real serious or concrete that's been put in motion?
I don't think so. Again, for people who feel that their premiums went up considerably, especially if they had the minimums already in place, I suggest that they look at a couple different insurance quotes, and they may find themselves coming out ahead.
Okay. Anything else on this particular issue, Gordon, that you think needs to be addressed to help kind of clear things up for viewers?
I mean, I think everybody's concerned with cost of anything going up a cent,
sure.
and that's understandable. But if you're on the losing end or the receiving end of an accident, there's also, again, horror stories about inadequate coverage or uninsured motorists out there. I would suggest you look at the benefit right now, and if you had that type of accident now, you'd probably be happy that we've put those protections in there where auto insurance is going to mean something in Wisconsin again. So I think too much of the focus has been on, you know, the cost because of the drum beating by the auto insurance industry, and we should really focus on the fact that we've restored some basic consumer protections, many of which existed in Wisconsin long-standing and until the mid-90s.
Okay, all right, good. Well, let's talk about a couple of the other things then that you've been involved in. The payday lending legislation, which you were very instrumental with putting together. What's the status on that right now?
We are, we knew we were in for a pretty big fight. We could probably have an entire show on the different lobby groups out there. There's 30 registered lobbyists. We did have a hearing a little more than a month ago. We did a joint hearing between my Consumer Protection Committee and financial institutions. It was about 8 hours long. We heard from banks, credit unions, other financial institutions, the critics, the lenders themselves. And I think the one theme is that clearly we need to do something. I don't want to make perfect the enemy the good, so we're working, we have a working group that's looking at what's going to be possible, and again, I'd like to get something passed. I think we will in the Assembly, and I'm hopeful that we'll get the same thing in the Senate. It may not be the restrictive rate cap, but it'll be something that, considers someone's ability to pay one loan at a time, and doesn't allow the same type of abuse that we see that exists in Wisconsin today.
Mm-hmm. The lenders themselves, though, that you're trying to crack down on, they're pretty opposed to this, of course, because it's a bite out of their business, it's a bite out of their pocketbook.
Right, but it's a business model that's based on consumer indebtedness.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I'm sensitive of any jobs out there, but when your existing job is based on multiple people's being in debt, the money that they're spending on debt is money that's not being spent in the local economy, and most of the income of people who are sucked in by payday lenders is disposable income, meaning that they spend all of their income, and when they're paying for high cost credit, they're not buying goods and services from our community. So I think there's an economic case to be made that we'd be better off economically with some reform measures. Now,
this particular legislation, Gordon, I realize it's called, that you're going after payday lenders. That is different, however, from the lenders where you take in your car title and get
This
money,
one covers
correct?
car titles as well.
Does.
It
Okay.
does, and there is a separate auto title bill as well. What you see with auto title loans is people that are down to their last, they don't have anything else but the car they have. And that really is the most abusive form, and they'll get a loan for more than they're ever going to be able to pay back, and then they'll lose their one means of transportation, and it really falls apart then. I think those should be outlawed altogether.
Mm-hmm.
We're in a time right now with where credit is tough, especially with some of the credit card reforms and other things going on with financial services. So I'm sensitive to that, and that's why I'm kind of trying to take a proactive measure. And can we find the right balance between protecting people from abusive, players out there, and maintain some access to credit for people that may not have another means. So, I'm hopeful we can get. I'm talking to a lot of other states that have done reforms short of a rate cap. But I don't want there to be any loopholes that we've seen the industry take advantage of.
Okay. So within your payday lending legislation, there is a provision for the auto
Correct.
title lenders, but then there's a separate measure?
Someone
them?
introduced a separate bill, Representative Zepnik from Milwaukee, just addressing auto title loans. Our bill covers all consumer loans below $5,000,
Okay.
I believe, and that would include auto title loans.
Okay. All right. Let's see, what else is on my little list here? Drunk driving laws. That, of course, has been in the news so much lately, with so much more media attention on drunk driving and multiple OWI arrests and things like that. Where are we at? I realize that the laws just changed not all that long ago, but people are still saying we need to be even tougher.
Mm-hmm.
Where are we at with maybe making some real substantial changes in drunk driving laws?
Well, earlier in September, the Assembly passed a list of comprehensive measures that included taking our Safe Streets program in Winnebago County statewide. A lot of the counties wanted that passed as soon as possible because when they do their county budgets, they're looking for ways to reduce the cost of their jails. Giving judges more flexible options on probation and parole, increasing penalties on, I believe, fourth offense, and and ignition interlocks paid for by the person whenever the judge deems it appropriate. The goal of the comprehensive legislation was recognizing that there's not a one-size-fits-all provision. I mean, we had a town hall meeting up in Appleton with a bipartisan group of legislators, and we had the treatment people there that didn't want any enhanced penalties, and we had some victims there who wanted nothing but penalties. And it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. And the other thing is, again, this is sort of happening at the worst time because additional penalties lead to additional costs in our correction system and our court system. But it passed the Assembly unanimously. The Senate, on the last day of session, passed a similar but not quite the same bill. And we may have a special session in December to reconcile those, knowing that we need to take action. This is always a tough one because it is awful. The deaths are senseless. We read something just about every day, it seems, where there's a multiple offense, but there's not a magic wand that you can do to automatically overnight change the culture in Wisconsin. But we need to do our part, and it does include, I think, different things for different people. Sometimes it's a drug or alcohol problem. Other times it's just you got to get that person off the road because they're a threat to society. But addressing AODA programs costs more money as well. So, I think there's a lot of demand out there. I hear from a lot of people that there's got to be an answer, and I think if anybody had the exact answer, we would have done it. But I think we are moving forward with something, and I think we'll get it done this session.
Okay, because other states are much tougher than Wisconsin is. And so they're finding ways to get it done, and it would be nice if Wisconsin would too. I understand about the more jails that we need and all that kind of stuff, and more treatment programs if we are going to be stepping things up. But it sounds like we're putting price tags on people's lives in some cases.
Yeah, and I don't disagree.
It's
just one of those things where one of the hang-ups in the Senate was, would you include a liquor tax, or I know our paper would be supportive of funding some of the spending with a beer tax, and again, those always complicate issues, but a lot of it is, in Wisconsin, we are a little different than other places, and it's going to take more than our legislative efforts, but we certainly need to do our part.
Okay. Puppy mill legislation, as we tape this, Governor Doyle will probably be signing that in the next week. Where did you vote on that?
Voted yes. I actually chaired the committee, came through the Consumer Protection Committee. That was about a 5-hour hearing. This is something that members of both parties have worked on for 12 years, and it's always been a struggle between, responsible dog breeders who didn't really want government intervention and, Humane Society advocates who wanted to see there be some protections in there, and everybody has different ideas on different standards. But I really give, both authors were from the Eau Claire, Chippewa Falls area, and they worked with kind of all parties, and in the end, I think, found a middle ground. If you're 25 dogs a year or above, you're going to be regulated by the state. There was a fee included that was supported by the breeders in the end to help fund the oversight of this. And again, like drunk driving, it's not going to solve all the issues. Sure. People should still try to purchase their animals from responsible places, and I know the humane shelters are thinking they may see an influx once some of these places are closed. So.
All right,
go
very
there
good.
first.
All right, Gordon, thanks for being here. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right, that's going to do it for us. We will see you next time. Until then, take good care. Keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh.